Welcome everybody to the latest episode of On the Sofa with Sal. And today I'm pleased to introduce our guest, Dougie Stringer from Skills to Thrive. Dougie, very excited to hear about the work you're doing. It's really, really important. Can you tell me a bit about your background growing up and what made you so passionate about wanting to do this, please?
Of course, yeah. So my background, I went into care. So my mum took her own life. My dad became alcohol dependent. And they talk about adverse child experiences. And when I've mapped mine out and the things that I encountered, you know, as I was, before I went into care, experienced probably like 8 or 7 adverse child experiences. So there's a lot going on. A lot of chaos, and we can get into that. But, you know, my sort of journey then, I then became looked after in year 7, so that's probably like 11 years of age. And for me, it was a huge opportunity in terms of what my foster carers did in terms of keeping us together. So when I say we, me and the 2 sisters. And they give us that platform really to thrive. So then through care, I mean, it was a great experience. Again, we can go into that, but I'm a huge advocate now for good foster carers based on that personal experience. And I then did the mistake of going back to live with my dad at 16. It wasn't great. There was loads of chaos again. Realised why I then went into care firstly. And I wanted to, if I'm being honest, Sal, be normalised, and I didn't really want anything to do with my care background back then. You know, I sort of, when I went to uni, for example, none of my mates knew. I just wanted to, you know, be into sport, get involved in working and that sort of stuff. And it was only until I was about 26, I thought, actually, I could probably do something now to support other people that are coming through the care system. So at that time, I was working in sales and working, doing different bits. You know, it wasn't just hanging around, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't my sense of purpose. It wasn't something that I could lean into. But then I started thinking, actually, what could I do? So I worked in a residential home for a little bit. I then worked, I decided, actually, I want to do this full time. So I worked at a local authority then as a personal advisor. And if anyone doesn't know what a personal advisor is, it's a leaving care worker that supports somebody through the process of coming through care and then after care. And then after that, I became a qualified social worker, and that's where my passion lies really in terms of supporting young people.
Well, I think it's quite interesting for me listening to you there, because when I was young as well, I didn't want to tell anybody. You know, people when you go to uni and that, they're like, oh, what's your family and that, and you're like, and at school, you don't want to tell people that you're in foster care. And even today, it still feels like there's a big stigma about that. Even if you've got really lovely foster parents, and a lot of our kids do call they are long term, and they call their foster parents mum and dad. And I think that helps them feel like, no, this is my, you know, my chosen family, or the family that I'm put to live in. And I know when I was young, like, it was not good experience either of children's homes or of foster care, and not good. And when you have that instability and that challenge as a young person, then to move on and try to go out into the world and manage all the challenges of that, it's really, really difficult. So can you tell me, like, nowadays, if you were about to leave foster care, is there like a standard minimum young people should have, or is it still very chaotic and there's no standard that people have to meet? Say if I were leaving care now at 18, what would I expect in terms of support?
Okay, so I guess it depends very much on that young person's situation. For example, if they're staying put, which I think the research would say that actually it's probably in the young person's interest to stay put. So that in that case, they would probably get more support, because obviously they've got then a foster carer there, even though it's not their foster carer, because they're almost a host, aren't they, at that point, rather than a foster carer. But that said, because they've got that person there, they'd obviously get a lot more hands-on support, that, you know, valued support. However, if, for example, that young person then is deciding to live in their own flat, go back with parents, you know, continue with supported accommodation or hostel type accommodation, the standard package essentially would be a personal advisor, so one personal advisor there once every 8 weeks. Sometimes it can be more if there's a lot going on. But in terms of the legal framework, once every 8 weeks is the minimum, and they would get a pathway plan. And to be fair, they get a leaving care package, which there's some standardised things. So they would get a grant, for example, up to £3,000. They would then get things. So if they're going to uni, for example, they get a package there. So there's definitely a lot of standardised packages. There's also a local offer. So some local authorities will give a free bus pass. Some local authorities will support with leisure passes. So, you know, it can be okay. But if you can imagine, a lot of young people, if they're in a normal flat and they see a personal advisor once every 8 weeks, well, what happens then? You know, there's a lot of problems, and you know, we see that through the statistics and the shocking news article that I know we spoke before we recorded. There's just so much more that can be done, and it's just not being done. Yeah.
So I think if we can go back to that situation and that news article, the thing is, when you're in foster care, and let's assume they're nice foster carers, like we have at Apex, amazing and wonderful people, they still, you know, when you leave, they're probably not going to be able to keep your bedroom free forever. They will need, you know, fostering, looking after children is expensive. So you might not have that bedroom to go back to, like perhaps a birth child would. And then it must feel very kind of, you're on your own, and who is there for you? You've been used to living in a house with a family, and then it might just be you. So could you talk a little bit about that news article and why it is so important that people support the work that you're doing?
Of course, so the news article, for anyone that wouldn't know, but it's something that's come out over the last few days. The Manchester Evening News were covering essentially that over a period of time, there's a number of care leavers that have tragically committed suicide, took their own lives. And in that, it talks about the lack of preparation. It talks about the lack of support from leaving care into adulthood. This is something I identified a very, very long time ago. This is not something that I've come up alone. You know, there's a lot of research that will back this up. But I've seen it every day in terms of my local area in Cheshire, that actually we're not preparing young people at 15, 16, 17. And often then, you know, with that lack of preparation, with that then lack of networks and, you know, often that lack of support around them, it's quite inevitable, really, that often young people will struggle. And them statistics, you know, and I know I talk about these statistics quite a lot, but 25% of the homeless population are care leavers, 25% of the prison population are care leavers, 39% are not in education, employment, training, and they're 5 times more likely to end their own life. So that's quite evident then with what this news article was about. And this is exactly what, you know, I've tried to do from, you know, doing my own thing, really. So setting up Skills to Thrive is exactly that, to try and combat that cliff edge and to try and be that support network. So we do a bit of a blended approach. So we do the physical mentoring, but the digital mentor or the digital life skills platform is something that I think, you know, will be that little bit of that guidance, that support beyond leaving care, really. And I'm massively passionate about them networks and building them beyond 18 as well. I think they're significantly important.
Oh, totally. And I know when I finally, because it was like, go home in foster care, go home in children's homes, and I can't even tell you how many different places I was, but I know I went to 26 schools because I counted them. Wow. And then at 16, when I finally thought I've had enough and put myself in care, they were like, well, we can offer you a flat. And at 16 years old, there was no way I would have managed in a flat on my own. So luckily, I had school friends that took me in until I left for university, and then I didn't go back then. But in terms of just thinking about the role of foster carers and both their emotional and physical preparation for independence, can you tell us, what do you think they should be doing more of?
More of pushing young people out of the comfort zone is something that I'm really passionate about. I think some foster carers are brilliant at doing things for young people, and I think it comes out of a good place. And actually, I think that's really important to show that we care, but absolutely just as importantly, I think we need to be pushing young people out of the comfort zone. And we know that fear's there. You know, as 34-year-old that does a lot of things, things, you know, can become fearful. You know, not everything is what is on the face of it. So if I'm doing a talk, for example, there's that little bit of fear there. And so it's important for young people to know that actually, even as adults, get fear. But absolutely, I think by just staying in that comfort zone, we're less likely to do things. And the problem is then, when we're then living in a flat and we don't want to ring the gas people, or if we're in a flat and we don't want to, you know, do our bed or whatever it is, if we've not been pushed out of our comfort zone and we've not been given them life skills, you know, of how to clean the property, what to use to clean, how to cook on a budget rather than ordering a pizza, and having them good habits as well to keep, you know, we spoke before about habit stacking and different things. I think these are all really key to a young person's success. And if they've been wrapped in cotton wool, I think that's just as detrimental as if they've just been not given any support at all. So I think both ways. I think it's a problem if they don't have any support at all, and I think it's a problem if a foster carer is probably doing too much for them and not giving them them skills. There needs to be a real middle ground, really.
So just following on there from what you were saying, Dougie, which is like really important, it's a balance, isn't it? There's the practical skills, which sometimes people might think you're being cruel or unkind, you know. Encourage kids to get Saturday jobs and things like that. Get them to understand the importance of all our carers have to get a Go Henry or equivalent card, so that the young people understand saving money and so on. And we interviewed people from the Share Foundation the other week talking about Children's Trust. But when you get to that point of leaving, you want that young person to really know, whilst you might have to take other young people in, whilst they might not have a bedroom, you hold them in your heart and invite them back for Sunday lunch. A lot of our carers do that. Sometimes kids go on holiday with previous carers. You don't want to feel like you've lost your family as well, especially when you don't have a birth family. So I think it's really sad, those stats, and we want to do everything we can to reverse that trend. Just thinking now, a bit more practically again about Skills to Thrive and what you do there. You mentioned two aspects, the mentoring and the skills development. Could we first talk about the mentoring and who does that and for how long and what that looks like, please?
Yeah, of course. So logistically at the moment, that's more northwest based, northwest of England, and that would look like a 10-week programme for initial stage, and it's supporting young people with goal setting. We think that's really important. I think role modelling is critical. You know, young people need that role model. So automatically, I'd like to think with that blended approach of, you know, my care experience then as a social worker and a PA, I've got a bit of that blended approach. And so, you know, I work really, really well face-to-face young people. I'd like to think that that's part of my skill set. So I'd absolutely like to think that we can connect quite well. So what we do, we look at where a young person needs that support. It's not just rigid. You know, some young people might be more resilience. Other young people, it might be promoting their, you know, mental well-being. Other young people, it can be, right, this is your goal. How are we going to achieve this educational goal? Or this is your goal in terms of, you know, supporting them into sport or supporting them into an art group or whatever it is. So we do a 10-week programme. Week 7, we'd work with the young person in the organisation who have referred to see whether they want to continue, or, you know, some young people after 10 weeks, they might absolutely be ready. And that might just be a really short period of work that we get some great outcomes after that 10 weeks. A lot of young people will likely stay with us for a bit longer, because I'm really passionate about the things we spoke about. So whether that's regarding supporting them into, regarding resilience, it could be things like mindset. I'm really, really passionate about that post-traumatic growth.
Yes.
And, that comes a lot of the time with understanding yourself, understanding where you need that support, and then us being that link in terms of finding how we can do that either in the community or in terms of that one-to-one work. But then in terms of like the practical level as well, if the digital platform is the sort of digital stuff, we often replicate the things in the physical stuff in terms of tenancy ready support if they're at that age. If they're not, if they're in school, we'll do more of the other stuff that we spoke about. But if they're ready and, at more like a 16, 17 towards 18, then we will focus a lot of the time on tenancy ready support, the money management, the budgeting, understanding things like credit and debit. If they're in debt, for example, how can we do that? So it's a wide span of things that we discuss and things that we work through, to be fair, Sal.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I like the combination of like the practical help and skills, and then, as you say, the emotional resilience and how to build that. And I think it's hard sometimes for a lot of people that haven't been through the system like we have to understand what it's like not to have that backup and support of a birth family behind you. People going, you're doing well, you've got this. And obviously, like, if you've got good foster carers, then that's a great help. But this one-to-one person there guiding you through that is brilliant as well. So that's great. So can you tell me a bit about the app, please, and how that works?
Of course, yeah. So it's a life skills digital platform, and the content's delivered. A lot of it is video content delivered by me.
Yeah.
On 2-minute videos, obviously young people are into TikTok and wanting quick advice, quick guidance. So the information that are doing them 2 minutes isn't groundbreaking. A lot of the stuff's already out there.
Yeah.
But it's bringing what's out there together in a 2-minute video, as I would with a young person that's asking questions physically. I'm doing a 2-minute video, giving a really compressed analogy or analysis, should I say, on what exactly that topic is. So, for example, my explanation on housing options. So I do a 2-minute video on what housing options are for a young person.
Brilliant.
Underneath that video, there'll be external links, whether that's links for shelter, whether that's links for, if it's a government website that gives more information, the external links below that. And then what we've built in there now as well is a certification. So as we go through the modules, which are all broken up, we've got housing, tenancy ready support, things to do, for example, practical guidance in a flat. Then we go through into finance, budgeting, like we spoke about, how to manage money, how to earn money, education, employment training. Then we get into health and wellbeing, and the things again we spoke about in terms of habit stacking, etc. And then, like I say, with them modules broken down, underneath or at the end of the modules, we've done that certification, because that's important for a young person to work through to see if they've to prove that they've actually learned anything.
Yeah.
And to also get the sense of satisfaction. Actually, we've got a certificate that can be emailed to the young person that they can give to foster carers, social workers, or even put that on CVs to show that actually they're transferable skills from what they've done in the app.
Yes, yeah.
To a tangible certificate.
Yeah, that sounds great. And as you say, a lot of young people these days, everything's got to be quick and fast, and they won't bother going searching for it. And can you tell me, maybe give me an example of where you've helped a young person?
In my role now or in the past?
Like now, in terms of what you do on Skills to Thrive.
Yeah, of course. So we work with different foster agencies that often a foster carer might be uncertain really about what that post-18 things looks like. Yeah. A lot of foster carers are really comfortable with little ones, really good with young people that are, maybe 9, 10, 11, and not always confident with that post-18 trajectory. Yeah. So a young person then might be approaching 18 and they don't really know where to go. So what we found with a couple of foster agencies that we worked with recently, that foster carer has been able to give the app to a young person that's then fed back to us how beneficial it is, that they know where to go when they're in crisis, or they know where to go when they need that support.
Yeah.
And more importantly, they can identify with someone that's been in that position, so myself, from a personal experience, but also as a PA as well. So they know what to expect, because that uncertainty, Sally, even the ones that feel confident at 17 are really anxious about that post-18 plan. Because actually, why wouldn't they? You know, it's a huge change. Yeah. It's a cliff edge. You don't have a social worker anymore. You don't have that same support. Possibly, you know, imagine this, that you're 17 years of age, you've been told by your social worker that in 6 weeks' time, you're no longer going to be living where you feel safe, supported, with someone that you might call mum, like we mentioned before, but instead you're going to work, you're going to live in a place that you don't know. So a lot of young people are fed back how supportive that is. Emotionally, really, just to give them that sense of confidence and that sense of being familiar with that trajectory. But that's even aside from the practical stuff that they've told us has been, you know, really, really important. And I think you don't know what you don't know. No. So that's the problem. Sometimes, you know, you think, oh, well, I'll Google these things. But if we don't know prior to 18 what we're going to expect afterwards, well, you know, often that's how we get into debt then, because, you know, we might pick up a credit card that's got, you know, high interest rates. Well, what's interest? Well, actually, again, that's in there as well. So, I mean, I think we are still on the early stage of the journey. We've not got loads of data in terms of long-term impact, but what we've done, we've mapped it out in terms of testimonials and focus groups, and the feedback we've got from you know, the early adopter local authorities and the foster agencies is amazing, really.
Well, we're certainly going to be using it, and we'll put it in that, you know, when a young person reaches this birthday, this will be systemised into their support mechanism. And I want us to think very carefully about, like, maybe our social workers go out and do a couple of visits after the young people have left, and where we do a welcome box, we do a leave-in box. And also, I think any agency should be saying to their carers, it's still, even though, you know, the child, young person might have left, it's still part of your role is to include them, make them feel important, hopefully visit at Christmas, that sort of thing.
Definitely. And what I'd say there, Sal, as well is, you know, I still see my foster dad. So my foster mum died a few years ago. When Maureen was alive, we seen each other a lot, and that's huge, you know. And I think if you've made such an impact with young people, they're going to want to do that. So then to cut them off, I don't think it'd be right. And what I'd say is the benefit of, you know, you mentioned before about going on holiday. I mean, Maureen, I know not every foster care is in this position, but we went away as a family and as a wider family. We went away to places like Kenya, Morocco, Turkey. Fantastic. You know, we know that not every foster care is in that position, so I'm not saying that's the blueprint. But what I'm saying is I'm 34 and I still think back of when we went away with them. And no, above that though, it was just the fact that they kept us as a family and they introduced the wider family. And I always felt like a family network. So you don't need to go to Kenya to feel like this. But the fact that they did, and they just didn't drop us off in, you know, a respite. And again, I've got a lot of respect for that. If someone needs that respite, fine. But the fact that they never did that, we felt so supported. And, you know, loved as well, really.
Yeah. And so investment is not just money. Investment is time. It's about making people feel important, spending time reading storybooks, helping the young people with the homework, just sitting and, you know, I've had taken teenagers and they might want to show you 100 pictures on their phone and you're like, do I really want to be doing this? You know, no, you've got to help me pick which one I look best in. But to them, that's the most important thing you can do at that point in time. So it's really important we show that we care, and you do that partly by an interest in what they're interested in. So now, going back to Skills to Thrive, how important it is, why does not every young care leaver get the opportunity to have this facility at the moment? Why can't they access it?
So we're encouraging local authorities to commission the app, the platform, on behalf of young people. So what we're saying is, it wouldn't be for young people to commission this themselves.
No.
You know, at 14, 15, 16, you know, you're probably not going to think, actually, I've got that disposable income, I'm going to spend it on the app. So what we're saying is local authorities should want, and really they should want to support young people until they're 25. And actually, Ofsted are saying that they would have a duty to do that. What I'm also saying to the local authorities is it's a return. We spoke about investment. It's actually a return on investment because if we're investing in young people at 14, 15, 16, and they're much more prepared at that age, they're then less likely to become homeless at 18. They're less likely to then need support with, you know, their health needs, for example. If they're knowing what to do at the point of feeling a little bit low, or they know what to do in terms of habit stacking. And, you know, it's not just me that's saying it. There's a lot of research to back this up, that actually better supported, better prepared a young person is. And really, it's common sense, isn't it? That actually, if we're preparing young people to budget their money, to earn money and then save that or put that into different avenues, actually then they're less likely to become in debt. They're less likely then, if you're in debt, you know, as we know, that can affect your emotional well-being. It's a huge catch-22. So what we're saying is, for local authorities that just don't do it because they care, actually, if you're caring about your numbers as well, it's a return on investment. And, you know, it's so in terms of cost, you know, it's almost £2 a month per young person. So we'd like to think that absolutely isn't, you know, it's not a significant cost for a local authority. And so, you know, what we're doing is encouraging them organisations, foster agencies, local authorities, or charities as well that support young people, then just get involved and come to us, and we'll. And also what I'd say as well is, them organisations can have their local information on there. So we've got the ability to add your own modules. So for example, Birmingham, who are huge partners, they can have their own modules on there. They can have their logo on there, so it's white labelled, and they can make it unique to Birmingham, as you know, other foster agencies as well.
So what I'm taking from this is people need to see this in the round, and we talked before, we've got the stats there on the number of young people that end up on the streets, prematurely take their own lives, end up in prison. Access to the scheme could be a really good way to help prevent that. So when you're looking at costing, as you say, you have to look at impact. So for the local authorities that haven't joined, don't be one of the last. Make sure you're signing up and you do this, because it's really, really important. Okay, and we have been joined by Kit Kat on the sofa today. Bless him. So I wanted to ask you, given your experiences, what really helped you move healthily to independence, would you say?
So I'd say there's a few things, to be fair, which I think, you know, when I mapped it out myself, I thought, well, firstly, it's a fascinating question that absolutely I've done a lot of sort of internal investigation myself, and I don't think it's one thing. I think we spoke about previously role modelling, the power of foster carers. I think that is huge. I also think things like the power of networks is significantly important. Now, for a lot of young people, we think, well, the local authority are going to be there and they should be the ones that are going to be that network. But as we've discussed, we often have a PA once every 8 weeks. So what can we do as foster carers to support young people? And I believe the best thing to do really is encourage them to build their networks at 18, 19, 20 and beyond that are going to be there for the times when it's not so great. So a prime example is I'm into things like Thai boxing, where that's my community now. That's where I find that sense of belonging. You know, when times are good, I'm at Thai boxing. When times are bad, I'm at Thai boxing. And I think sometimes the way I feel before going versus the way I feel after is a completely different thing. You know, people have opened up to me whilst at Thai boxing, so it's a safe place. It's not for everyone, you know, and you can find that space in art. You can find that space in IKEA when I used to work there. That was my tribe then. You know, it was my tribe when I was at uni. I think the important thing is not exactly what it is. I think it's finding your place, your community, and that being the thing. And I think as foster carers, as social workers, we have to try and empower young people and support them into finding whatever that community is. I think that is really important. So back to the question, I think role modelling and having some good people around me has been critical. Leaning on things like sport for me is absolutely essential. I think I know we spoke earlier on, Sal, about coming out of our comfort zone and coming out of things like building resilience. And I think that for me has always helped me to focus. So for example, last year we did Everest Base Camp. So for a few months before then, it gives you a focus, doesn't it? You've got small goals. Everyone feels low at times, but I think if you then are able to lean on the things that help you. So for me, it's been that Thai boxing. For other people, it might be something else. But I think you've got to have that to lean on, because unfortunately, we're all going to go through challenging times. And at the moment I am as well personally, that we need them networks, we need them communities, and we need them, some people call them coping strategies, don't they? So whatever it is really, for sure. So it's a long-winded explanation, a long-winded answer to your question.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. Yeah, I think, there's probably not just one answer to that. I think there's definitely a few different things as well.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but it's really upsetting when you look at those stats and those figures and you think, I survived and I'm doing really well, and it's such a shame that not more of us do. But we're doing our best. I know foster carers out there, most of them are doing their best. So, And
what I'd say as well, Sal, I think because we are care experienced, it's important for young people to see us, that we've gone through a certain path, and they can have hope that actually they can see it, they can believe it. And often, I don't know about you, but when I was in care, I couldn't see others that were going through that same thing. It's different now because you have got things like podcasts, you've got things like Instagram and TikTok, and so we can have that. But it's also up to local authorities to identify that, to understand that, and go, how can we allow these people, these care experienced individuals that have done something to inspire others, how can we give them a platform to do that? And there's a lot of pushback sometimes when you're care experienced and you want to try and help, and you've got the power to do so. For some reason, some local authorities expect you either to do it for free or they don't get back to you. And I don't know always if that's because they don't care or whether they've got some other agenda. But I feel that this is a really powerful thing that actually, I was at a focus group on Friday in Leeds, and the young people were saying, it's quite inspiring to see what you're doing, given the fact that you can relate and everything else. So I think there's huge power in that.
There is, absolutely, 100%. And as you say, I think if you don't have that, you can feel very isolated and very like, there's only me in the world sort of thing. So we do a lot of activities. So our foster kids love getting together and meeting each other, and that sense of community is really, really important. So you're doing amazing and wonderful things there at Skills to Thrive. Can you tell me if you could have a crystal ball and see into the future, in 5 years' time, what would you wish for the organisation?
I want every young person that's coming through care to have access to the platform. I think every single young person across the UK needs to, be inspired. They need to be better prepared. And I think the way we do this is to collaborate with organisations, like Skills to Thrive, that has that both lived experience and that blended approach with the experience as a social worker and personal advisor. I think there's huge power in that collaboration. And I'd like to think every organisation in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland can work with me and essentially every young person to have access. And, I think there's what we can do is some special stuff, to be fair.
Can you tell me if there's young people out there watching this that are feeling nervous about leaving care and moving on, what would you say to help them?
There's probably a lot of things really, and going forward, trying to find that sense of purpose, and to do so, is possibly looking at things like ikigai, which is the Japanese concept of finding your sense of purpose. And them 4 strands are doing what you love doing, doing what you're good at, doing what the world needs, and doing what you get paid for. Is exactly how somebody would find their sense of purpose. So leaning into that is my huge bit of advice.
I always say to young people that I meet, where we don't want to hold ourselves back. So the past is the past. You didn't have any choice about that. But you now here enjoy this moment, and you get to write your future.
Yeah.
So imagine that, envisage it, and go for everything you want out of life.
100%.
I wish you all the very best. It's been an absolute pleasure and a joy. And I don't get to meet that many care experienced adults as well. So thank you so much for your time.